How did you break in? Did you actually break in with Shawn Michaels, or did you go there after you already trained?
No, it's funny. That's a big misconception. I through the magazines, and that's another thing is today, there's schools throughout, and with the internet, obviously, it's much easier to find schools and places to train you and this and this. But back in our day, we it was just so much more of a cliquish business. It was so much more protected and secrecy, as we've been mentioning. And you couldn't just look in a phone book, to find a wrestling school. So again, through the magazines, thank goodness, I ordered this book, and it said, it was like how to become a professional wrestler. And I think I paid like $15, not including shipping and handling. And got this little book that I still have somewhere at my parents' house. And at the back of the book was just a list of wrestling schools. And Sean's school was in there, and you had to pay, I think, another like $15 just to get a flyer or an info packet or something. And I just couldn't afford it. I think his school was like 3,900 at the time. And that was out of my price range, unfortunately. So I went to a couple other places and trained, and I've been very fortunate to have name trainers. But when I went down to San Antonio to meet up with that group, Sean had already handed the school over to Rudy Boy Gonzalez. And if people aren't familiar with Rudy Boy Gonzalez, they should be, because he was kind of the backbone of that operation, along with like Ken Johnson and Paul Diamond and Dusty Wolf, all these greats that may not be household names. I mean, they certainly were to me. And from what I understood, Sean had just undergone back surgery and had all this hardware in his back, and so he wasn't doing a whole lot of hands-on. He still was, but he had these other really solid vets to really put the students through their paces and all this stuff. But long story short, Sean eventually passed that school over to Rudy Boy Gonzalez, and that's when I kind of came on board. And so I had kind of mentioned a lot of this in an interview, and they ran with it in terms of like, oh, he trained with Sean. I was like, what part of I went there after Sean passed the school off? What part of that did you miss? Because I never
So,
once said Sean trained me. And funny enough, years later at WWE, Sean pulled me into his locker room one time, and he was like, can you clarify something for me? He was like confused. He wasn't confrontational or anything, because we always got along really well. He was like, did I train you? Because people keep saying I trained you, and I keep thinking I would have remembered that. Like, I would have remembered this kid. And I said, no. And I kind of gave him the brief explanation like I just did. And so that was kind of funny. But no, I never trained with Sean. I did get lots of helpful advice from him when I was working up there, but never went through his school. Worked with most of his students and befriended a lot of them, but no, my real initial training, and mind you, I had tried starting when I was 16. I went to Skull Crushers in Florida, exotic Adrian Street. And, when you're looking to train with somebody who's been there, like try to find a name or somebody who's been where you want to be, because the idea was, and they had this quote in the book, and it was so profound. It said, how if they couldn't make a star out of themselves, what do you expect them to do with you? And that was so profound. And I thought that makes all the sense in the world.
right.
So I sought out name trainers. Nothing against the Plumber Steves or the Backlot Billies or the whoever the hell, the Caveman Kyles or whoever the hell is in every state.
Plumber Steve was a hell of a hand.
He was great. He could unclog any toilet. And so I started out at Skull Crushers at 16 in Florida. And unfortunately, when I got there, Miss Linda picked me up from the airport, and everything was really cool. And the brochure was really funny because it was like, we have, you know, apartments for the trainees. We have state of the art. Everything was state of the art, which should have been a big red flag, right? It was like state of the art rings, state of the art weight room equipment, state of the art editing suite, all like private pool, all this stuff, right? And I thought, like, this
Wow.
is amazing. This is
Yeah.
like half the price of Shawn's, and this is perfect. So I got out there, and Miss Linda broke it down to me, and she was like, well, you know, Adrian's, she's sweet. They're both very kind. She was like, he's just undergone eye surgery. So I'm not sure what all he's going to be able to do. I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm here now. That could have been useful before I got out here. Needless to say, he didn't really show up at all, and maybe 1 or 2 times. And that was just to try and sell us these paintings that he had painted of like naked Native Americans with wolves and stuff, like covering their dicks. Yeah, it was weird, man. I was like, what the hell is this, you know? But the apartments were like this roachy infested duplex. The state of the art editing suite was like an old like camcorder plugged into the TV with like tinfoil on the bunny ears. The ring, the state of the art ring, was a rusted ring frame in the back with like weeds growing through it. There was not even the boards or anything across it. It was just the frame. I thought, what the hell is this? The gym was in like a little shed in the backyard, and all the weights were rusted. It had like barnacle on them, and it was a disaster. The private pool was like one of those little round plastic pools you pick up from the front of like Walmart. I thought, this is a rib. Like, this is a rib. And so we ended up just traveling to other shows in the area. I think we went as far as Mobile, and just tried to attend whatever independent shows we could and hope that somebody there would run us through some paces before the show. And they did, you know. And I met Stevie Richards when I was 16. I met Sensational Sherry. I met Marcel Pringle, who was apparently the brother of Percy Pringle. Took a liking to me. It was weird. But it was cool. I mean, it was a lesson. I didn't understand it fully at the time. I was very upset and frustrated. I felt like this was a big waste. Fast forward years, after a few kind of dead ends, I had picked when I didn't really want to go to college after high school. I wanted to just jump right in. But it, you know, it was like a deal, like some agreement that I had made with my family. They really wanted me to go to school. So every college that I picked had a wrestling school nearby it. That was the idea. It was like, I'll go to school during the day and I'll moonlight training and try to go after this dream on the off time. And so I ended up in Pittsburgh, and I was going to train with Dominic DeNucci and Shane Douglas. They had just opened up the House of Hardcore 2. They had the first one in New York, and it was successful. And they had attempted to open a second one in New Brighton, Pennsylvania, which is where Dominic DeNucci lived, or still, you know, I'm not exactly sure, but that's where their school was. It was just a suburb of Pittsburgh. So I got up there. I went to school at Duquesne University, and didn't stay there forever. But when I got up there, Shane had just tore his bicep, so the training was off. So I ended up going up to school to train, and there was no training all of a sudden. And that was the one time I made the dean's list because I had nothing else to do but
guess I gotta open these damn books.
Honestly, yeah, it was, you know, I guess, you know, what else am I going to do? I guess I'll go to class. Ended up transferring to University of Memphis because I thought, well, can't go wrong in Memphis. You know, wrestlers grow on trees here. And then when I got there, it was a weird period in between Power Pro Wrestling kind of being on hiatus, and then it was before Memphis Championship Wrestling, which was their developmental that they established there for a little bit. It was in between that period, so there really wasn't much going on, so it kind of blew up in my face. So I just kept running into these walls, and I thought, like, is this just not supposed to happen, you know? and hopped on a Greyhound. 12 hours later, I was back in Texas, and my buddy was like, turn on the news. I turned on the news, and sure enough, Ivan Putski had opened a school in Austin. So I had, funny enough, left. I didn't apply to a single college in Texas. I was adamant about getting out of my home state, only to eventually end up right back there. And that's where it ended up happening.
Let's get the record straight once and for all. Let's set the record straight. What you're trying to say is you were trained by Shawn Michaels, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Good. Well, now we got that.
Exactly. We've changed. Yeah, that's right.